Soundstripe.
The Sharpymic Podcast.
Soundstripe.
Hello and welcome to the Sharpymic Podcast with me, Michael Sharp. This inaugural episode features a mate of mine who you'll come to learn more about, not just in this episode, but future episodes as well. How do I even introduce him? He's the original Glasgow Da. That'll do. That's it. So let's get straight into it. It's your man Gio. Enjoy.
Pump two.
Gio, my man, how are we? You're the first guest on the podcast.
Well,
Is that a good honour?
it had to be, Michael. Of course, I'm the most important and the guy that should be on it. You know, we joked about it and laughed about it over many a pint. This concept, so I'm just glad you've finally pulled your finger out and got it going.
I know, because it was one of the things that even during the pandemic, that was when it first kind of came about, and then there's loads of stuff happened in between that. All good stuff, mind you, but
There was a lot of mad ideas through the pandemic. I'm glad you went with this one. I don't think the wild Atlantic fishermen or the wrestling the polar bears ideas had much gravity, but anyway,
no, it didn't. And that means
it's certainly a lot safer.
put them aside for next year, the entrepreneurial skills. But I know. So for those who don't know who you are, you're Gio, an old friend of mine from way back, and we used to live near each other as well. And
Correct.
people that are listening, we first
in
met
our London
in
days.
the London days, yeah. So
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It must have been about seven years ago, I think. I remember. Obviously, we were working in the media industry at the time.
it was through media that we met, yeah.
I remember the first day seeing you across the room. I thought big Charlie Mulgrew had got a job in the
Oh,
office.
that's right. I remember.
And,
What was it you said to me again? You said something.
I heard your accent. I looked over and I says, I don't need to ask you whether you're a Celtic supporter. You just looked the part. And you smiled at me and said, how long have you been supporting Rangers? I went, yeah, cheeky bastard.
I actually thought it was Frank McAvenny. It was coming towards me.
That's true. Yes,
Or
in my
Simon Le Bon.
younger, slimmer days, Pump 2.
Franco.
Franco's the man. They were good.
They
Good
were
laugh
good.
those days.
Yeah.
It certainly sort of brightened up my
Well, that was
the office adventure.
It was what was it? I think you said to me, I need to ask you a question. Are you a
Oh yeah,
jungle? Are
that's
you a
right,
jungle
yeah.
gym or a current bun?
Yeah, jungle gym or a current bun, you know. And of course, I knew the answer anyway. It was a rhetorical question. Anybody who looked that good looking had to be.
So, actually, I've been meaning to ask you this for so long as well. See the Kung Fu song? Like, where did that come? Where did that come from?
Oh, that's a great question, Michael. I can't remember. I think it was probably something that, you know, I think it was sometime younger when I was working in the industry, and it might have been caught in one of those tumbleweed moments where I didn't know what to say or what to do, and it just came to me, and suddenly I just went, ho 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 ho, ho 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 ho, and everybody started laughing. So it became a wee signature thing, and I used to just do that when I was nervous or panicked or
Well, every
didn't
time I
know.
hear it, it's just automatically just puts you to mind. And I mean, I know that we've all had like we've meeting friends and things like that at the pub, and it's just like
Yeah.
if we're all there before you arrive, it's just you just burst through the door and it's you're
Well,
straight
yeah,
into it.
exactly. I mean, I think everybody likes to make an entrance, and I think that was mine, and it suddenly became just one of my things. It was almost like, kind of a sound beat or, for me. But yeah, that was it. So I used to do it in the office, especially when I get bored and get everybody fired up. It always helped when I used to look after a kind of big team of boys, and it was always quite good to get them divvied up, and that was it.
I know. Obviously, we met through media, and
Yeah.
then it turned out we actually lived pretty near each other at the time as well. And,
Yeah.
which is mad.
That was quite ironic that of all the cool places to live in London, but none of us lived in them.
Yeah.
And we lived in the boring place called Boring Bromley. But actually, it was actually a good laugh.
Actually pretty nice.
It was
Based
good
in
fun.
Chislehurst, and a
And
stone's throw away from Bromley, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pubs down there as well that are pretty nice that we've drank dry
well,
almost, and
we had many a good adventure getting back to Bromley, or been out in Bromley, or um, taking up a wee challenge or two in Bromley. I certainly will never forget the one of our spontaneous nights on the way home, where I think you decided that we'll go to O'Neill's and do the chicken wing challenge. That was always a good night. I always remember that one.
because we ended up in was it a pub called the Partridge as well, which I always think of Alan Partridge when I hear it. But that was the one with the mini pies and the
Oh,
mini
how
ales.
cool was
But
that?
it was an ale.
That
It was an ale. You're right. It was for
that was absolutely fabulous. I mean, I think the concept of that I loved was always the food pairing of pies with beers, and just so as everybody knows, what they did was they cleverly served up sort of 4 or 5 different little mini pies, along with 4 or 5 different beers that they chose to go along with the pie. And actually, it was really, really good. It was a
great
wonderful
concept.
concept,
Great
great
concept.
flavours, great beers. I just thought it was just cracking idea. Loved it. And then that kind of, we started doing a bit of a foodie adventure, because at the time, it just worked for us that we would go out and eat. And we had a lot of laughs. There's nights we'd bet, and the loser had to pay. And
Aye.
I remember you had to cop for a rather expensive kebab that night. And yeah, that was a laugh. And then obviously the chicken wing challenge is the one I always remember, because you actually stitched me up a wee bit, because at the time it was like the chicken wing challenge. And this was the thing, like, because I'd gone to the toilet or something, come back. By the time I come back, there's a big platter of 100 wings in front of us, and and we've got to make a way through it. You were getting stuck in no bother. I was 3 wings in, and I was toiling. I mean, I was really, really. It was then I realised that it was half barbecue and half hot wings, and you'd positioned the plate with all the hot wings my side, and you were enjoying all the nice wee sweet barbecue ones. And you know, well, you're smacking your lips. That's lovely. I knew that the next day is going to be tough for me.
A ring burner.
Certainly the Japanese flag was going to be. Oh,
But that's what it was, because it
that
was
was
like,
grim.
I don't think like people obviously know that the hot ones, and a lot have a lot of famous guests on, and they do the hot sauce and the chicken wings.
Yeah,
But I don't think that was even a thing at the time.
I laugh when I see it now, because Michael, we were doing that 6 years ago, before anybody was making a big thing of it. We were actually we come up with that kind of concept between us, and sadly I lost that one. But yeah, no, that was
Do you know what? I had a taste of them, and I thought, fuck me, that's I can't feel my lips. I can't feel my lips.
Because you're
But
saying, yeah, they're not too bad. And then I tried one of yours. I thought, you have got to be joking.
yeah, I was like, no
This
chance. I
lovely,
am.
sweet, smoky, sticky barbecue, whether I'm
Which, by the way,
licking a demon's ring piece with this chicken sauce.
Why is it spicy?
It was, yeah.
I don't even.
Anyway,
That's the thing. Though, I don't even eat. I don't eat meat anymore. So like that was, I think it might have been the reason why I decided not to eat meat anymore.
I tell you, I would have probably given up meat after that, but no, not
No,
at all.
that was hilarious. But I know. So I was just thinking, it's like, obviously, like, for people that don't know as well, you've been in the media industry for a long, long time, and
Yeah,
not to say
yeah.
you're an old bastard or anything, but you're a veteran, as they say.
Bit of a pioneer. Yeah, no, I had a sort of long career in the media industry. I mean, I headed off to London sort of when I was young and unafraid from Glasgow, and headed down and worked in national newspapers. I worked in a major television company for a long, long time, called ITV, for about, a long 7, 8 years.
For the British viewers and
Um,
listeners,
I worked in radio, and I worked in another large newspaper corporation that was. I kind of worked in both sides of the political divide. Actually, I worked for a rather left wing newspaper group for a long time, and then
right?
a very right wing newspaper group for a long time. So it was quite nice to see
How both sides operate.
the difference, But yeah, it was good. I mean, working in the media industry was a good laugh. I mean, I kind of, when I watched the film The Wolf of Wall Street, it actually kind of reminded me a lot of my media career in London through the kind of certainly the 90s and the noughties. I mean, when I worked in the industry, it was completely different. It was survival of the fittest in many ways, and it was pretty brutal. It was pretty awful. It was pretty ugly, but it also was very funny, and you know, a lot of people get a lot of opportunities, and there was a lot of laughs and a lot of fun, and
What was the funniest thing that
people
happened
seem to
then?
get along. Well, I probably, and I don't really want to upset anybody here, but I've got to tell this story how it is, and just to give you a reality check of what life was like in working in the TV industry in the 90s.
The glory days.
We used to have this thing in the office, and it was really silly, really pathetic, really immature. And I know everybody's going to go, "Oh yeah," but if somebody was leaving, somebody would go out, and one of the secretaries would go out and get a "sorry you're leaving" teddy bear card, and it would go around the office, and everybody would say, "Oh, sorry you're leaving," and write a wee message on it. But some of the boys would be, a bit cheeky and rude and see this wee kind of teddy bears waving this generic picture and decide to alter it and draw things like specks on the teddy bears and wee hats and flags, and then suddenly would
Recocks.
deface it, and suddenly, yeah, a couple of willies would be drawn on the bears as well, and that was a good laugh. And it was
It's
almost the type of
harmful,
thing that
harmful
if
banter.
your card wasn't defaced like that, you
Y-
weren't very
Yeah, no
popular,
one
and
liked you.
that's where it,
Yeah.
it suddenly became like that. So it's a thing that we did, not officially, we did it with our own money, and we get a present for someone. So anyway, there was this time this lovely girl we worked with who was moving on, and she lived down in Brixton. She was a black girl, lovely girl, and the reason why I'm saying it because it's important to the story. Um, she was leaving, and of course she was very popular. Her card came round, and it was defaced. It was great, but then one of the new temp girls sadly took it into the kind of managing director's office by mistake to sign the card, which he shouldn't have done. So he was infuriated by this card. He was decided he was
Kicked
upset
off.
with this card. So he comes roaring out, probably because he had a couple of drinks that lunchtime, to be fair. He comes roaring out the office saying, "Right, who drew a Willie in that card?" And then he calls me by name right away because I've just got one of these faces. Because he knew I was Scottish. I don't know. Maybe he thought it was me. So me and five guys were called in to the office, and he's kind of right that he guessed five of us anyway. So I tried to protest and say, look, I won't mention his name. I'd say, look, hey, X, come on, this is a private thing that we do. You've got to understand it's just a culture thing that we do here. There's nobody taking any offence of it. I mean, these are the days before people getting sexist and upset about things. Anyway, so he's having none of it, and he just says, look, did you draw Willie in that card? I said, yes. You're sacked. And along the line, next guy, I won't mention names. Do you draw Willie in that card? So right along to the last guy and said, did you draw a Willie in that card? And he, seen what's happened to the other four of us, he said no. And the
He
four
kept
of
his
us, of
job.
course, all turned and looked at him. At that point, he decided to go for a lesser. It's almost like not admitting to murder, but agreeing to manslaughter. But he said, no, but I might have coloured one in. So we're all on the floor in
Might
hysterics
have gave it some
because
wee pubes or something.
actually, if you think about it, that's actually worse in many ways because you've identified that because this girl's a certain ethnicity, you've tried to get it, so it's in the right ethnicity group by colouring one in. So anyway, we're all duly fired, sent home. We went to the pub, get pissed, and then as we were sitting on a Monday morning thinking, what on earth are we going to do? The head of HR rang us to ask where we were. And we said, well, of course, we were fired. Said, don't be silly, you can't be fired for that. Get yourself into the office. So we returned to the office,
So
nothing more
you
was
were in the
said of
pub.
it.
You were still in the pub.
Well, we were in the pub Friday, Saturday, but Monday we were kind of at home, and then we all get called
On
in
Monday
to.
morning.
So it was always kind of like he had to apologise because he couldn't fire us, and rightly so. I mean, he just fired five of the most talented money making guys on the floor. So they knew at the end of the day, if it's a difference between a wee kind of card that might upset the odd person at the time, or have us, then it was a case of us. Did you draw a Willie on that card? Yes, I did. But then for someone to deny it, thinking, I don't want to get the sack, then realise he's about to face the wrath of his mates and be, completely unpopular, he then decided to go for the lesser degree of, I never drew a Willie in a card, but I coloured one in, which we all thought was hysterical because he's only admitting to a worse offence in many ways.
Yeah.
And that was it. But that was in newspapers, Michael. Yeah.
And that's just even, not even touching the sides in terms of the Wolf of Wall Street nature as well. That was just relentless. But that was, I mean, it was
Oh, it
the
was
'90s as
crazy.
well. I grew up in the '90s. I was obviously not around for the '80s, but obviously you learn more about it as you get older and you look into it. But
Yeah, but even up until the early noughties, I mean, I can remember I had one boss who was just a brilliant guy, really really good guy, did really well at the newspaper, and it was his birthday, and for some reason, because he was of Russian descent, that decided to somebody decided to get a vodka luge
a
for his
vodka
birthday
luge.
as a birthday present. The vodka luge, just to let everybody understand what that means, it's basically an ice sculpture that's got a hole drilled through it that you pour bottles of Stoiling off vodka through it.
Nice.
And I came in this morning, it is, I mean, bear in mind, this is another newspaper. We used to start at 7:45, we'd been in the office. I mean, that's what I mean
Mm.
about a long day. So you walk in, and I'm looking, there's this huge ice sculpture in the middle of the office with like 2 cases of vodka. I'm like, what on earth's that?
That's your breakfast.
So uh, what happened is, before we know it, and it wasn't the boss's idea. Somebody, like one of the kind of office managers, whatever, decided it'd be a great idea, and of course started. How does that work? Well, let me show you. And before we know it, at 8:30, nearly everybody in the office has had 2 goes on this thing. And everybody counting down 1, 2, 3, 4. How many can you take? About 9 o'clock, everybody's absolutely slaughtered. But that was it. Everybody worked hard
Yeah.
and played hard, and but you, what was great about the office then is that, well, there's maybe some that were good at that. There was others in the background that are really good at picking up slack and help you out, and you would always help them out because if they needed to get away early for something,
Mm.
you'd cover for them and you'd work late and put the hours in. But I mean, that was a day. We were all ending up sort of, you know, uh, drunk by lunchtime. But in saying that though, there'd be other times you'd work, you know, like sort of say when 9/11 happens, we worked almost round the clock for about 3 days
Oh,
without
yeah.
really getting a break. So there's other times when it did matter, you were there and you worked long and hard hours, and you weren't getting overtime for that, but you just did it because that was a job. But that was a good thing about, to be fair, about the industry, that there was a lot of give and take. They would, and we were doing very well. We were commercially brilliant. Eddie Soley were brilliant. We're hitting targets. Everything was good. And we're quite good at relaxing, letting you have little things like that. But they knew when it counted that you would get down and do the business. And we did. But we used to do mad things. We'd go away conferences to Morocco and Casablanca and New York, Amsterdam. Lots of great places we'd go to. Talking about drinking, I mean, one newspaper group, Michael, and again, people can believe me or not, uh, we get called into a general meeting, all the staff who would go out and entertain people. So that'd be journalists who would go out talking to football managers or whatever, or politicians, or the commercial guys who would be out seeing clients at agencies or brand managers. And one of the guys, one of the MDs, kicked off big time because somebody had submitted an expense receipt for a lunchtime restaurant meeting, and on it was house wine. And he's shouting and bawling, saying, "We are," I won't mention the newspaper group, "but we don't do house wine. We're a class above that. We do who knows about wine?
Jesus.
Very few of us did." So we were all sent in a wine course so that we knew the difference between a Merlot and a Cabernet Sauvignon, or a bottle of Sancerre, and
Or a
a
tonic
bottle
wine.
of Liefremels. it was crazy. So a lot of time and effort was spent on us knowing. So is it, the idea being, rightly so, that if we went away to um, you know, to see a client who liked Argentinian wines, then we'd know, oh well, it must be the Malbec that you're looking for, or the difference between New World and Old World wines and what grapes. Well, I mean, it's
It's
crazy, but
it's a nice thing
that
to
was
be
attention
educated
to
on. Yeah.
detail. It was. I mean, they saw people would think this is crazy, but actually in a way it was very clever because they knew it was all about relationships and bonding. And if you bonded right away with, whether it's politicians or um, football managers or commercial guys, that it's all about relationships, and that was a great thing. I mean, there we were always told, your first meeting, make sure you go in, and the first thing you do is shut up and listen because you'll get everything you need there. There's no point you getting in and talking to them for an hour because otherwise you're coming away knowing nothing. They were very clever like that,
Mm.
very, very clever, and I learned a lot there.
You remember this noise?
No.
You should, because it's a Tinder notification.
I don't really want to talk about.
That was
that was
in a nutshell.
that was a night you stitched me up.
One of many nights that we started off in central London and then ended up back in Bromley. And as obviously the night went on, we just got more more pissed as the night went on. And that was one of the nights. That was the first night that we did the bet of like who's paying. So it was like, was it rock paper? Was it rock paper scissors? Something.
That's right.
It was because
Yeah,
we ended up in some Turkish restaurant.
rather nice,
It
rather
was
nice Turkish
so
restaurant.
nice in
Yeah,
Bromley, and
very, very lovely. But like everything else in
we
London,
were
hugely expensive.
with that fact we couldn't even hold the fork and knife up when we were when we were eating, and then so that was that night as well. And I just again, you pissed off to the toilet. I took your phone and came back, and you were like, "What's going on? You ordering a taxi?" Or I was, no, just set you up on Tinder.
Yeah, I was single at that time, and Michael decided to set me up on Tinder and then show me how to use it. And I
Well,
rather,
we'll
I
keep
ra- I'll keep that story for later. But I was
absolutely.
rather
But,
excited when I got a match and I showed him the photograph of this lady lying spooning with a Bengal tiger, until Michael pointed out that she was the big spoon and the Bengal tiger was the little spoon, and saying he must be massive.
bear in mind
And
that I had to have a second look at that the next day when I was sober.
yeah, I never had my glasses on. I couldn't tell the difference between the Bengal tiger and her.
But I mean that was, I mean, like many of our nights started off in central London, didn't it? And then we just
Ah,
even
fall home in a train drunk and
exactly going to
ah,
Victoria Station to get the train, going to McDonald's, encountering the people there, and then encountering people on the train on the way home. There was never a dull moment, was there? It was just
it was always an adventure. I mean, if you remember the time you were helping me back home because I had a knee operation. I'm on
yeah.
crutches, and you helped me back home in the train, and we got on the train, and we're obviously we've enjoyed a night out, and you helped me up the road, and
I'm handing
I says
McDonald's
rather,
out to randoms sitting next to me in the train.
yeah, yeah, there was, they were sitting next to some nice people in the train. Then these rather pretty girls who'd enjoyed their night out got on the train, and then, if you remember, they asked me,
No,
can I borrow your
we
crutches?
were first speaking to a lady that was sitting across from us who'd been on a work night out,
Yeah,
and she was a bit she was a bit tipsy as well, and she was eating a bag of Doritos as well. She was a very very nice lady talking away to us, and she was trying to share Doritos a bit as well. So she was there as well. So we're just setting the scene.
aye,
She was sitting across from us
yeah.
on the train, and then you just
She was there. She was a lovely lady, and saying,
enjoyed her night.
these young
Yeah,
girls
it must have been
asked.
it must have been a student night out or something like that. It must have been a student
No, I
night
think they
or
were older
they
than
older
that. I
than that.
mean, they were rather attractive. I mean, it looked like almost like the Chanel models night out. I mean, they were quite nice. And one asked to have a go on my crutches and
Have a go in
skipped
your
me nut,
crutch.
didn't skipping up down the island, and then she excitedly came back and said, how did I do? How did I do in the crutches? Did I do okay? Give me marks out of
Yeah, rate
10.
me out of
And
10.
you, yeah, give me marks out of 10. And, I do suffer from Tourette's, I think, but I kind of sort of looked at her and looked at you and said, I'd certainly give you 1. And you were on the floor
I'd
laughing,
definitely give you
and
1.
so and,
That's what
and,
you
and
said.
so was she. And the woman eating Doritos, I think she was a bit amused by it. I don't
And
think
then
she
she
quite
choked on the
got
Doritos.
the thing, because she then looked at me and said, "Oh, do you think she's pretty then? I mean, do you think she's attractive?"
And by this point, I
Uh,
had sunk right down into my seat because I don't know if I was
Oh,
embarrassed
you were
or the
hiding
fact that
because
probably
you
one of the
knew what
funniest things
was
I've heard.
happening.
Yeah,
So
I knew it was
this
coming out.
lady's asked me if this rather pretty girl who's just skipped up down the train in my crutches said, "Do you think she's attractive?" And I says, "Well, let's put it this way. She reminds me of my house." And she's looking at me bemused and saying, "Your house? I don't follow. What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've got a huge semi." And you were in the floor, and she's thinking about it while she's eating her Doritos. Then it's dawned on her, and then slapped me over the head with a bag of
Oh, it
Doritos.
was so good.
And you're laughing, howling. Oh, it was just.
I've noticed as well when I first went to London, the humour was a little bit different. Being from Scotland and then trying to, pass your patter off as something funny. To back home it's funny, but then like when you're trying to speak to people that are from all over the world in London and they don't quite get it at first,
Well,
or maybe that's me. Maybe it's because my chat's terrible.
no. Your chat is terrible, but no, I'm not joking.
No, it's not. It's
But if you
don't
remember,
lie.
I mean, one thing we used to laugh at being Scottish in England is that whenever you would speak, they'd say, "Sorry, pardon, I don't understand your accent," and you'd have to repeat yourself about 5 times. So whenever you'd say something, they'd always say, "Sorry, pardon," and I used to think at times it was just ignorant, they just didn't want to listen. But what we used to always laugh at is they always understood when you were in the bar. If you turned around and said, "Would you like a drink?" they would never say, "Pardon, sorry, I don't understand." It'd always be, "Oh, yeah, a large gin and tonic or a pint of lager, please."
Selective
They'd
hearing.
always understand then.
Yeah, honestly, that did wind me up when you first.
Oh, do you know it?
Because I don't. I
Do-
sound I sound more different now than what I did back in. Like I had a bit more of a slang accent, if you want. But now, like having worked and lived in London, and having to obviously when I was doing music and when I was modelling and stuff like that, you have to speak to people and they would never
yeah.
understand a word that you were saying. So to try and articulate yourself a bit better, you'd have to speak slower because generally, apparently, Scottish people talk really fast. But no, it's just that was the one thing I just hate repeating myself as well. And sometimes I have to do it now, obviously with the Dutch. But I'm trying to speak broken Dutch and with a Scottish accent as
So,
well.
sorry?
Oh, they're smoking a pancake.
Listen, talking of Dutch, tell me what the name for a Hoover is again. That had cracked me up. I love this. I love Dutch language is so
Well,
good.
that's
What's the name?
well,
What do you call a Hoover?
Hoover is Stoufsucker. But see,
Stuff sucker. That is
Stuff
so
is
cool.
dust. It means dust, and
But it's
sucker
just
is sucker. So like, yeah,
suck.
I
But
probably
it just means
butchered
that
that
stuff
by the way.
sucker
But
just means it sucks everything up.
well, that's the thing. I mean, now obviously I'm learning it, and I need to obviously speak it more fluently. But when you see me,
It's
when you see me
easy. It's
breaking it
easy to
down,
speak.
it's not as difficult as you think. I mean, you're breaking it down. Some of the stuff
Yeah,
makes sense.
just watch the Steve McLaren video of when he was the manager there. He picked it up really well. He's like, yeah, watching the football, the Arsenal, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Why
for
not?
sure. Yeah. Smoking a
That's
pancake.
true though. But when
Yeah.
when Dutch people speak, they always make me laugh because if they do tell you something, they always confirm it and then immediately question it. Honestly,
Yeah.
you listen, they'll go, yeah, Amsterdam's the best city in the world, for sure. Why not? They'll say it, confirm it, and question it. They do it.
I don't know if you've seen. There's a clip online of I think Rangers were playing Feyenoord or some another team, and I don't know if it was a European Cup or if it was UEFA Cup or the Champions League. I can't remember. It was a while ago, and they were all steaming in Amsterdam, and then this Dutch journalist going around going, "Ah, so you're a Rangers fan, are you? So you like talking about Dick Advocaat?" He's like, "You like Dick?" And they're like trying to cut a question, "Would you like Dick?" And he's like, "Fuck off." Do you know what I mean? So like, it was so funny. He was trying to catch them out, but
It's like, who's been talking?
Rangers, your former coach was Dick Advocaat.
Dick Advocate, yes, yeah.
Do you like Dick?
Fuck off.
But 80s. You've got a fascination for
Well,
the 80s. I mean, I love the 80s. I always say the 80s is like a
best music.
I think
I
I
mean,
thought
honestly,
so. I think so.
it changed so much. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, synthesizers killed music and stuff like that," but actually, you think that some of the geniuses that come through that time, and the music that they made was fantastic. And it's funny now that all the younger generation now, all the Snowflake Society, all love the 80s, watching Stranger Things, listening to Kate Bush and
Yeah.
running up the hill and think that's fantastic, or listening to Flock of Seagulls, for God's sake. Oh, that's so cool, that tune, or
That's
Depeche
a good
Mode, or Human League, or
Yeah.
they're all discovering things. That's why there's so many 80s bands doing tours now, because catching a mixture of old
Tears for
guys like me
Fears.
and yeah,
Song's very
it's a lot
popular.
of great music. I mean, at the moment, it's like I struggle with the music scene now,
Well, my mum and dad obviously were big into their 70s music, and I said to mum, I was like, "Oh, mum, I start like that." She's like, "Why do you listen to a lot of 80s music?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I was just drawn to it for some reason." And like,
Yeah.
she thinks it's the worst period for music, apart from a few artists like Bowie and things like that were still kind of thriving,
Yeah.
and obviously Rod Stewart. But no, I think it was the start of all the processed beats and
I mean,
that you
you
still hear
talk
that
about,
now. You hear it now, like
well,
the
you,
808s and that snare that was
bands like
computerized
Kraftwerk
Kraftwerk. Yeah,
were the geniuses. They were the German guys who come in with technology, with the Autobahn song, and nobody had ever heard anything like that before. And groups like Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark and Human League, were inspired by that and created their own roots. And they are tunes now that, you know, a lot. I mean, I know working sort of the commercial side, a lot of ads now. I hear 80s beats and 80s songs on them, thinking, my God.
yeah. I mean, a lot of them are on TikTok sounds now as well, like a short sound bite that then people are going into look into it more and find it on Spotify to stream or look it up on
Yeah.
or whatever or buy the records. And it's no, I mean, I think it's good. It's great, but at least everything has a cycle that comes around again. But
Mind you, some of the fashion was a bit, I mean, the 80s fashion was a bit
fashion,
mental though,
fashion's it crazy.
I mean, it was all sort of like ruffles, big hair, and lipstick. And you want to see what the women, and you want to see what the women were wearing. That was just the boys.
Or the New Romantics.
Or the New Romantics. Questions.
Boy George.
Oh, Boy George hit the telly. I mean, I remember my mum and dad thinking, what? No, who? What is that?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's running about now, looking for rights for the LGBTQ. Boy George was, he set the tone. He was one of the first that was ever allowed, and then the 80s, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and all of that kind of stuff.
Even that song as well, that Relax song.
You think that was a lot of the big
gay,
what are the big gay artists that come through at the moment? You had Mark Almond, Soft Cell, Holly Johnson, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Jimmy Somerville. Remember Jimmy Somerville?
Pete Burns.
He come through. Pete Burns, yeah, the loads. And that really set the tone. And Boy George, that changed the scene. Wasn't that kind of that opened up people's sexuality and quite rightly so.
Yeah, no, it was a pioneering time, and it was very
totally. I mean, up until the 70s, there's rumours about David Bowie and stuff like that he was David Bowie is bisexual. I mean, nobody knew what bisexual meant. We just thought it meant do you buy sex.
Even when where we were, I hadn't actually until I looked into it. Like obviously, I had lived in central London, in West London, But before that, it was obviously down near Bromley and Chislehurst Way, and even looking at the history there, like David Bowie was from that area. You know, Sushi and the Banshees were, you know,
Oh yeah, Susie and the Banshees.
yeah,
Where you lived, there was a Chinese restaurant
Hong Kong
called
Garden.
Hong Kong Garden,
That's
and
right.
they wrote a song. Susie and the Banshees wrote a song, Hong Kong Garden, and it's a brilliant song. And that's
And
mental.
again, that
What about a
was
Chinese restaurant?
and that was to do with, it was a racism thing as well.
David,
They
yep,
had encountered
correct.
in
Yeah,
what a song. And
David Bowes from Bromley, and another 80s group that was from Beckenham was Haircut 100. They were from Beckenham.
I've not heard of those.
Oh, you know,
No, I don't know. I don't know those ones. I
you'll
maybe
know
know
the
their
tune.
songs. Yeah, I maybe know their songs.
Yeah, yeah.
Even like so, there was a
Love
place.
Plus One.
Yeah. Oh right. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Love Plus One.
Love Plus One.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah,
And not to mention the Scottish artists as well that were coming through, and the bands wise as well.
Simple Minds.
Simple Minds.
Cracking Glasgow. Altered Images. You know,
There's Primal Scream as well at that time. Were they coming through?
Primal Scream that come through later on. But yeah, Simple Minds were the kind of like,
Ultravox.
Dublin had U2, Glasgow had Simple Minds, and that was the kind of bands that were coming up when I was a boy. And of course, Ultravox, yeah,
Ultravox.
of course.
Vienna.
Forgetting, yeah, they were, yeah, absolute fabulous Ultravox.
Fabulous, absolute fabulous.
I just absolutely loved them. It was just Glasgow's a real buzz about the place. Come with the big hair and the makeup, like, ho, 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 ho. Here we go, boys.
I was going to ask as well, like, what? I mean,
Once.
Well, I remember you always telling me as well that before obviously the Queen had passed, was it last year? Was it or? Yeah, last year. Like that story had been written already for years.
Listen, when I joined the newspapers, it was there. It was the code was London Bridge had fallen. There was a file already there that was, they had this like 16-page supplement ready to go, and all they do is just somebody's job was just to update it.
Mm-hmm.
So as the dates and so updated with additions to the royal family or what happens, or instead of the Queen's ruled for 20 years now, it's 30 years now, it's 40 years. It's just updated. But the newspapers get a file in most people. Good and bad, ready to go. Whether newspapers are terrible, they could make you and break you. That was the bad thing, the power of and the hypocrisy of the newspapers sometimes, People think, it must be true because it's in the newspaper. Or
I think especially back
they
then.
have no idea of the conversations that happen behind the scenes.
But the thing, especially back then, people took that as gospel, that's what it was set in stone because it was in the newspaper. Yeah. And then you learn quickly that's not always the case. Yeah. So
I'll not get drawn into anything, but I could say there's a lot of hypocrisy on there. Let's just put it that way, in many subjects.
I mean, speaking of that as well, what do you think of the whole, the unidentified aerial phenomena, the UAPs they're now called, which are obviously UFOs, and like I'm going to do an episode on the moon landing, for example, but it'd be nice to hear what you thought. I don't think we went to the moon.
We're jumping about here. We're going from our train adventures back home to Bromley to UFOs. Well, I just think, I don't know.
I'm just touching on it because I know it's been in the news recently as well, and
it's a topic that I think people have had theories, and there's no doubt things happen that governments quell because they don't want the general public to know about it because they think that they can't handle it. But if you think of our galaxy and our universe and space and infinity, if you think that we could possibly be the only creatures and inhabitants of this galaxy, then
and you're batshit crazy. I know.
Yeah,
no, well, I think
whether they've got the technology to visit or whatever. I mean, we don't know, but there are too many things.
There's too many things floating about as well
that don't just don't make sense. They don't add up, and well, I mean, I'm sure you'll do a whole episode on it and stuff like that.
I will.
Area 51 in
Yeah, I
the
might bring
America.
you back for something.
That'd be me
For
on that.
opinion
But I'm not really into. I'm not a kind of Star Trek geek or anything like that. But I kind of do think that
Oh, not me. I mean,
there
either.
is obviously something there's something more than we've been told. I know
There's
that.
got to be.
I from working in the media industry, I know we are limited in what we are told. So a lot of things we're not told that I know about. There's, one thing I remember coming back when I came back here, and I met up with a girl I used to know, and she said to me, I remember you told me years ago about Jimmy Savile. And I said, yeah, you're right, because uh, newspapers get files, everybody. We knew something was going on, but nobody was going to print it because this is a guy who had powerful friends, royal family, prime ministers.
Yeah.
They'd put a call into the media owners, and that story was quashed. So you could be the best story ever, and people ready to, testify, and that would be just quashed. That would just
It's
be told, leave it, and people would have to step away from it.
see, I know, and I just can't believe like things like that still they still go on. Things like that still go on.
Well,
But
you look back at it now and you think, how on earth did people not see that? But
what's came out now that a lot of people
sometimes if
have
it's
noticed it, and like you said, there was injunctions
sometimes
in
if
place
it's
that couldn't, they had to be honoured for certain reasons or the other. There's
I think
money
there was
changing
that,
hands
but
behind the scenes.
there was certainly that, Michael. But it's in plain sight, and often the most dangerous people operate in plain sight.
Oh, he was
Sometimes
a
the
prime
old saying, you
example.
can't
Yeah.
see the wood for the trees. When you look back in it now and you see him on top of the pops or clunk, click every trip, or Jim will fix it, and you look how he's very tactile with, you just think, what?
Yeah.
Never get away with that now.
He was,
But it was allowed,
he was not
and
he
that's
was not
why
oil
it's
painting
so.
either, was he?
No, it's just
Nah,
it's all very
it's
wrong. And
yeah,
and
like you
that
said,
Louis Theroux, even that Louis Theroux episode with Jimmy Savile, I've watched that many
yeah, he was. You
times,
could
and
tell
I think
he
Louis,
knew
how
something was
how
going on.
did
I
you? I
think
mean,
you could tell.
Louis Theroux's admitted afterwards, even he fell under Jimmy's spell, and he couldn't.
First,
Again, he
yeah,
was
because there
too
was
close to
there
it.
was two he did, wasn't it? I think the first one he was kind of maybe a bit oblivious to it, but that second time that he visited him when he went
Well,
up to Scotland,
the second one was almost like a reflection. I think it was after Jimmy died, and he was looking back at the tapes and going, "How did I notice that? How did I not see that?" Or he looked back and the car journeys, and when Jimmy Savile said, "Some people could say I'm a paedophile. I don't know." Uh, And at that point, you should have closed them there and then, but he never. He let it go. But anyway,
yeah, it's just.
what do-
I mean, that could be a whole. It's a subject I don't really want to. I just can't stand the guy. I just don't want to talk about him. But maybe it's just something that I
it just
cover
shows
down the
you.
line or whatever because it's
I think
mental. It's mental.
yeah, I think the point being is just that, as I say, the media control what we get to know and what we get to see.
Well, I
Um,
do firmly believe that, and I know you touched on 9/11 before. And obviously, I was very young at the time. I think it was maybe was it September? So yeah, I would have been 11 when it happened. I think I was still at primary school, just 10, 11. I can't remember, but yeah, I think yeah, like when that happened, we were obviously really confused. But like I said, if you worked in media at the time, like, my mum had kept a lot of newspapers from that time as well because it was something that we'd never ever seen happen. And I know that, like for example, like things have a lot have changed since then. Like airport security has changed dramatically since then. The way things are set up and everything. Um, it was just one of those surreal times. I can still remember it happening, watching it and
yeah,
hearing about it. And I mean, I have my own thoughts and opinions on that whole thing now that, there's a lot of times happened since it. There's a lot of things. I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, it was a terrible thing, but I still think there was part of me thinks it was an inside job with the US government and things like that. But maybe we'll save that for another day as well. But I don't.
yeah.
There's a lot of
I
evidence
certainly, I certainly think of all my time working in the industry, that
that was
you
intense
know,
for you. I take it in.
I was working in a newspaper at the time, and I remember we came back from lunch, and we come in, and everybody was round the TV screens. I'm like, what's going on? and I saw it, and I think I've never, and I never have to this day, seen anything that affected me more than that. I mean, that's moments in history. That's like JFK being assassinated. That's up there. 9/11 with what happened. That was just awful. That was hideous. Knowing thousands of people died. It was just awful, awful, awful. And you know, I remember I mean, it was mad for the month after that. I don't think any of us get home to see our families much because we're working around the clock doing 7 editions of the newspaper and things like that.
Oh, yeah,
It was pretty
I can
awful
imagine.
working
Yeah,
at that time. But
that was mental as well.
I don't know. I mean, I know like people look back at it now and think, but it just at the time, there's no way you could even think.
Oh no, definitely
But
not at
then
the
again,
time. I know, but
as things have come out now, we know that there's espionage and a lot of things goes on that we don't get to know about it, you know. But
no, I
anyway,
know. Again, like, it's something I really want to cover at some point as well. There's like some stuff that happened during World War II, then that led into the Cold War, which there's a lot of things that like a bit of a history geek on stuff like that as well. And I was actually listening to something recently about
well, I mean,
all the Nazis that had fled to Argentina after the war and things there, and Hitler still potentially being alive at the time and things like that as well, and him escaping to Argentina. I mean, there's so many fascinating like theories and stories that emerged from that time as well. It's just like it's still recent history
well,
in a sense.
the
So it's quite fascinating. I
one
think.
yeah, I mean, one of the things that post 9/11, when obviously retribution, somebody's going to have to pay for this, and they're looking around a bit, you know, who's going to pay for this. I think one
Iraq,
of the sort of Iraq was awful.
that was
The
all.
weapons of mass
Yeah,
destruction that was just,
that was all oil as well. That was all an excuse for. I mean, there's
well,
this.
look,
We
of
can.
course,
It's
America goes into places where there's money. You don't see them charging into Yemen because there's no oil, there's no money there, but there's the same civil wars and things, atrocities going on there. But the Iraq thing was awful, and I mean, one of the probably most powerful speeches, you know, of setting the record straight is, if anybody's seen the George Galloway speech to the Senate about the weapons of mass destruction and who was proved right and who was proved wrong, have a listen to that, and know that I'm a huge fan of George Galloway. I share his politics, but that certainly puts the record straight and tells the Senate who was right and who was wrong. You accused him of X, and it turned out to be right. But anyway,
yeah.
that's that.
That was an interesting speech as well.
But that was one of his most powerful speeches, and then you put that against what he did in The Big Brother, where he pretended to be a cat and tried to lick some. I mean, anyway. That's the other end of the spectrum. How you admire somebody somewhere, and you think, what a ball bag.
Again, I think I was pretty young when that happened as well. I remember watching that on TV and I was thinking, what the fuck is going on?
What, him pretending to be a cat?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, not that I
don't think it was
certainly
that young,
a
to be fair,
Big
but
Brother fan, but I remember watching the clip thinking, are you for real?
I'm sure it must have been part of a challenge or something, but still.
Oh, it was a challenge, but it's the way he looked at her and said, would you like me to be the cat? She's looked at him and smiled and went, knock yourself out. Meow. I mean, for
is there anything else you want to
sake.
cover whilst we're on before we wrap up?
Nah, just beam me up, Scotty. I think that's it. This is cheerio. Thank you very much for inviting me on
to the first
Michael,
episode.
Gio, to be
absolute pleasure.
The virgin pilot, and I'm sure there's a lot more we could have spoke about, and we're just listening to the ramblings of two dafties, but we had a lot of laughs and lot of funny memories, most of which we probably can't tell, but we did have fun. We did have a good laugh.
We did, and there'll be plenty more to come as well.
Oh, dearie me. Let's hope not.
We'll get you back. We'll get you back on at some point. We'll get you back on at some point as well.
All right.
We'll deep dive into some other wee issues as well. But thanks so much, Gio, for coming on.
Michael.
It's good catching up.
Take care, my man. Oh,
Absolute legend. Absolute legend.
Do you like Dick?
No, I don't like the Dick, but I like Dick Advocate, you know what I mean?